Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of World of Business, your weekly update into trending news and latest developments on the stock markets. It's also on this show we herald unsung but thriving business entrepreneurs. Now on this episode we're going to discuss why the 2026 tax reforms anchored in the Finance Act number 7 of 2025, which was put into effect on the 1st of January this year, are central to Zimbabwe's economic stability. Joining us is Mr. Persistence Gwanyanya, an economist and member of the Monetary Policy Committee and a regular on the show to help us unpack all of this that's happening. But first, we're going to give you the exchange rates as of today. The Zimbabwe gold to the United States dollar interbank rate was at 25.67 ZiG. The Zimbabwe gold to the Great Britain pound interbank rate was at 34.49 ZiG. The Zimbabwe gold to the euro interbank rate was at 29.88 ZiG. The Zimbabwe gold to the South African rand interbank rate was at 0.63 ZiG. The Zimbabwe gold to the Botswana pula interbank rate was at 1.83 ZiG. We also give you commodity prices as they are on the global markets. Gold per ounce traded at $4,637 after it went up by 0.83 percentage points. Silver per ounce traded at $89.84 after it went up by 4.28 percentage points. Copper per pound traded at $608.20 after it went up by 1.10 percentage points. Platinum per ounce traded at $2,394 after it went up by 2.48 percentage points. And that's it for the first segment. Do join us at the second segment as we've got more to unpack only on World of Business. Welcome to the second segment of World of Business, and on this episode we are discussing financing development and why the 2026 tax reforms anchored in the Finance Act number 7 of 2025 are central to Zimbabwe's economic stability. Joining us in the studio is Mr. Persistence Gwanyanya, an economist and member of the Monetary Policy Committee. Mr. Gwanyanya, welcome to the show as always.
Thank you for having me on the program.
Now, Mr. Gwanyanya, in brief, how does the Finance Act number 7 of 2025, which was put into effect on the 1st of January this year, strengthen fiscal discipline in Zimbabwe's public financing?
You may remember that in November, the Minister of Finance and Economic Development announced the 2026 budget. The Finance Act of 2025 and the Appropriation Act essentially gives effect to that budget. The budget, as you may remember, was a 9.5 billion US dollar budget, or 290 billion ZiG budget. And regarding the issue you asked about how it fosters stability, you find out that since we embarked on reforms, Treasury had tried to manage the budget deficits within the SADC benchmark level of 3%. The 2026 budget, in line with that thrust, is projecting a budget deficit of 0.2%.
From 3% to 0.2%.
The budget deficit, where I'm talking about budget deficit as it relates to stability is it's a key imperative on stability, especially how that deficit is financed. Normally, volatilities, price and exchange rate volatilities are occasioned by monetization of deficits. So by trying to manage the deficits within the SADC benchmark levels, but at very low levels, at 0.2% is almost a balanced budget.
Okay.
Treasury is trying to minimize the occurrence of volatilities on account of the budget deficits. So to that extent, we see the budget as supportive to a greater extent of stability. We have been enjoying stability for more than a year now on account of the prudent but also prudent fiscal policies and monetary policies, and you want that to continue. But the budget gives us confidence that the stability is going to be guaranteed.
Now, Mr. Gwanyanya, the 2026 reforms include a very modest value-added tax adjustment and refinements to transaction taxes, with mostly focusing on the ZIG, where you'd find the tax had been reduced from 3% to 2% to 1.5%. I'm guessing to promote the use of the ZIG. Now, how do these measures support reliable domestic revenue mobilization?
You may remember that the issue of ZIG, IMTT, or even INTT in general, started to be discussed, I think, earlier on, way before the announcement of the budget. And the market was of the view that the IMTT needed to be revised. I think the Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Investment Promotion, Professor Mtuli, answered the call from the market by a gesture to reduce the IMTT tax on the ZIG by 0.5% to 1.5%.
And on the
It's
US,
self-reflective of the legacy issues that we carry as a country. I'm sure the minister would have wanted to do more, and even at that level, the minister has indicated that they are projecting loss of revenue, annual revenue of around 89 million, which is quite significant.
89 million ZIG?
US dollars.
US dollars, oh, okay.
Equivalent, which is quite a lot of revenue. But you would find out that because of that loss of revenue and because of obviously some commitments that were done on the revenue side, the minister had also tried to compensate that loss of revenue through an increase in value-added tax by 0.5%. That equal increase
to 15.5.
Yes, to 15.5. So you expect that you mitigate against significant loss in revenue arising from a revision in the IMTT tax. But the revision in the IMTT tax is viewed to a greater extent, or should be viewed in the context of the broader ease of doing business reforms. It's not the only one that the minister is attended to. You want to be reminded out that as a country, we have already embarked on broader reviews of all the 12 sectors of regulatory fees, charges, and all other statutory fees at government relating to business. So far, reviews have been done on 5 sectors, and we have already started to see implementation together with, or effected some of them with the Finance Act, but others coming as through some SIs. And those are all reviews which are earmarked or which are aimed at reducing the cost, the overall cost of doing business in the country.
And confirm this reduction also helps strengthen the private partnerships, investments. Sorry, ndaitaka chikamashoko. But please go on.
So the reduction in the IMTT tax, and that gesture is very important, as it also helps efforts to reverse informalization in the economy. You may want to be reminded out that the level of informalization was getting out of hand, and the government obviously is expected to direct efforts towards reversing that trend. So with the reduction in the informalization levels, you also expect the financial inclusion to be boosted or to be supported. Formalization and financial inclusion are key components in supporting policy transmission mechanism. Policy transmission mechanism is more potent, is more effective, or that more efficacy in a more formalized economy, or where the financial inclusion is high.
No.
So we see that move as a positive move, but importantly, all the other reviews should be viewed in the context of the broader easy of doing business reforms.
Now, with increased focus on widening the tax base, what role do measures such as enhanced mining levies and improved IMTT administration play in budget stability?
So the enhanced tax administration, which speaks to the effective taxes, but which also speaks to the taxes that addresses the gaps, the fiscal gaps that we have as an economy, is very important for predictability, but also very important to guarantee the government revenues. You spoke about IMTT. Yes, there's been concerns from the market that on account of IMTT, ostensibly on account of IMTT, the economy has been informalizing, increasingly informalizing. And the IMTT itself, reflecting the informality in the economy, has actually also been going down. I think in the previous year, 2024 or so, our IMTT had gone down to about 4.6% in terms of contribution. But despite that, you continue to favor the IMTT because of the predictability, the consistency of the revenue from the IMTT.
The predictability and consistency of the revenue from the IMTT.
Yes.
Mr. Gwanyanya, we're going to come back on that one. Let me just hold you there. And we're going to take a short break. We'll be right back after this. Do stay tuned here on World of Business, only on ZBC. Now, welcome back to the third segment of World of Business. And on this segment, we're going to focus our attention to emerging sectors and sustainable budgeting and the long-term national interest. Now, Mr. Gwanyanya, digital services are now subject to withholding tax under the new framework. Why is taxing the digital economy important for modern revenue systems?
I think it is important to highlight that the digital services have always been subject to VAT.
Okay.
But what has changed or has been improved is the fact that the digital services are now subject to withholding tax, in the sense that on account of the challenges in collecting that digital services, there are agents who are effective in collecting the digital services, such as banks, such as mobile money operators,
Still on that
and
one, Mr.
other
Gwanyanya,
financial
I just need you
institutions.
to clarify on something. Who's paying this tax? Is it us, the consumers, or is it the streaming services or the digital service providers? Who is paying this tax, this value-added tax of 15%?
Nothing has changed in respect of the operation of that tax. Taxes are paid by the consumers. So the VAT is paid by the consumers, who is you and me, who is consuming the services, the digital services. But now, because of the withholding tax aspect on banks and other financial institutions and other agents, tax agents, it means those agents are now having to collect the tax at source and remitting the same to the government.
Okay.
This is important. We have talked about the predictability of revenue, the consistency of revenue. It gives a measure of consistency and predictability of the revenue.
All right.
And it also guards against or minimize the occurrences of tax evasion. You would want the tax burden to be equally shared in a country. You don't want others to seem like being favored because they've got an easy way of evading taxes. So to that extent, and on the basis of addressing the tax burden issues, equality of tax burden issues, you always want to think that this tax is going to address the concerns.
Now, Mr. Gwanyanya, the Finance Act introduces targeted incentives for sectors such as the business and knowledge process outsourcing. How do these incentives align taxation with emerging economic activities?
I think the tax is in itself a reflection of the response by Treasury to the realities on the ground. The realities on the ground is we face significant challenge relating to unemployment.
Yes.
So on account of the jobless challenges in the country, you always want to come up to grab every opportunity to create that creates employment in the country. The global trends are the developed and all other countries internationally are trying to outsource labor, maybe where it is cheap or where the skills are available. So we've witnessed that, and because our local industries are unable to absorb or to create the labor that, or to create employment that we want, you are always inclined in promoting and incentivizing those that are offering employment. So our people are now being employed by other players in the market, which I may not mention,
Yes,
but
for the sake of,
they are now being employed by companies that are US-based in South Africa or in UK, elsewhere. So there's always need to incentivize more such initiatives. So that is the extent to which that tax or those incentives are coming. So the minister has announced the incentives relating to the importation of specific equipment, specialized equipment to support this business initiative, but also announced special corporate tax, I think at 15%, which is in line with the minimum domestic top-up tax. Also announced other taxes on the corporate tax side relating to the
Mr.
employment.
When you're talking about tax, it makes me want to get into the issue of budgeting. You'd find sustainable budgeting is a key policy objective. Now, what features of the current tax framework help protect long-term national priorities?
So we have got long-term national priorities that are spelled out in NDS2. NDS2 has actually come up with, I think, about 10 pillars that we're prioritizing, key priorities for the country. And you want those priorities to be financed. If you look at the way the budget was presented, you find out that those priorities were actually allocated funding. The funding allocation was guided by those priorities. So, which speaks to our response to the key question of key macroeconomic imperatives that we want to achieve. The key macroeconomic imperative that we want to achieve as a country is to uplift the nation into an upper middle income society, a prosperous upper middle income society. And to do that, you need your aspirations to be funded. And this is exactly how the budget has been couched. And this is exactly how the budget has been guided.
All right. Now, domestic revenue is critical for service delivery. How do the 2026 tax measures help ensure consistent funding for health, education, and infrastructure?
So, relating to the funding of those aspects, and the issue I have already highlighted to say the NDS2 has identified priorities, 10 priorities. So if you're talking about health and education, they fall under a key priority of the NDS2, which is social protection, I think gender and social service delivery. But when you're talking about infrastructure, they fall under the infrastructure and the housing. So they are already catered for. And the financing has already been availed for the two priorities you have indicated. So relating to education, primary and secondary education have always been receiving the largest share of the budget. I think this year their share was around 47.4 billion.
Which was a jump from last year?
Yeah. And if you even look at the tertiary education, I think at 10 point something billion or so, you find out that there's always been prioritization of those social services. Also, the health subsector is a key subsector, especially if we reflect on the current situation. There is need for the country to double efforts relating to improving our health service delivery.
Yes.
But you always get comfort from the prioritization that you get from the budget that the authorities, the policymakers are concerned about the health sector. So we expect that in line with the budget, but also the pronouncements and prioritization that we see from the top about this sector, we expect a significant improvement in the health subsector.
Now, finally, what indicators should be monitored to assess whether the 2026 tax reforms are achieving their intended economic outcomes?
The indicators have always been there, quantitative and qualitative indicators. So the first indicator about the budget itself, we have set the appropriation bill has set the revenue and the projected estimated expenditures, and obviously arising from that is the budget deficits, which I have indicated is projected at 0.2%. That's the first indicator. How well are you going to do on your revenue and expenditures, and how do they calculate to the budget deficits? This together with other indicators, for example, supporting the expenditure indicator would be how well are you doing on employment cost, which is a key component of expenditure. At one point, I think our expenditures peaked at 92% of the revenue. This previous year and this year, previous year, I think our expenditures were around 54% of the total expenditures on employment. The target now is 53%, but the overall target is 50%. All those are targets that we giving ourselves, quantitative in nature. Even the debt itself is a key target that you have as a government.
Now, Mr. Kwanyanya, it's always a pleasure having you on this show. Unfortunately, our time has run out. Now, the discussion has highlighted how the 2026 tax reforms aim to strengthen fiscal discipline, support emerging sectors, and safeguard Zimbabwe's long-term economic stability. Now, until next time, from myself, Tafaranda Guta, and the crew behind the scenes, we're saying it's back to business.
ZBC News, the real African voice.